I see you as a champion. That's what Lewis Hamilton unexpectedly told Lando Norris after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Watch until the end if you want to witness Norris's heartfelt reaction. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. The crowd had barely thinned and the smell of burning rubber still lingered in the air when a moment unfolded that no camera had been ready for. But that would soon become the most talked-about whisper in the paddock. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix had been a war of attrition, of split-second strategies and emotional unraveling. The energy was raw, the atmosphere electric with unresolved tension. Teams were packing up, engineers still clutched headsets. Media vultures circled the key players hoping to snatch final reactions before flights whisked them away. But away from the cameras and beyond the PR-curated corridors, near the back entrance of the McLaren unit, something unfiltered happened. Lewis Hamilton, still in the half-peeled layers of his black race suit, sweat streaking his temples and jawline tight with fatigue, found himself walking side by side with Lando Norris. It wasn't arranged. It wasn't scripted. It was instinctual. Two British drivers, representing two generations, both still hot from battle but walking like brothers in arms. What began as a casual walk soon became a slow, deliberate conversation. Their heads tilted in, voices lowered, posture serious. It was quiet. Too quiet. A trackside audio engineer, crouched behind a stack of crates, catching the fading signal of a wireless mic, caught fragments, not because he was eavesdropping, but because the air had shifted. When Hamilton speaks that way, when his tone drops into that controlled gravity, people listen. And this time, it wasn't about lap times or tire wear or aero balance. It was legacy. It was prophecy. You feel it, don't you? Hamilton said under his breath, stopping beside a McLaren cooling fan. They all do. Every one of them. You've got them looking over their shoulders. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Norris tilted his head, unsure how to respond. Lewis looked him dead in the eyes. You don't even realize yet, you're not chasing them anymore. They're running from you. Norris, flushed from the heat and still processing his third podium in 5 races, cracked a humble grin, brushing it off with a soft chuckle. Appreciate it, mate, but they've still got more points, more wins. Hamilton didn't smile. He didn't blink. That's not what wins titles. You know what does? Command. Control. Momentum. You've got it now. You're making them change strategy. You're making them react to you. They're sweating every time your pit board shows purple. Norris's face slowly shifted from humility to something more complex. Disbelief blended with the beginnings of belief. He opened his mouth to say something, but Hamilton kept going. I've watched your lines, Lewis said, gesturing subtly toward the track behind them. Turns 7 through 9. You're 2/10 quicker than anyone on the grid. Not because the car's better. Because you're smoother. You're thinking ahead. You're 3 corners ahead of everyone. Norris blinked. You actually noticed that? Of course I did, Hamilton replied. I've spent a career studying the fast ones. And right now, you're the most complete driver out there. There was a pause. A long one. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's heavy. Charged. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Verstappen's watching you, Lewis said. Leclerc can't stop looking in his mirrors. Alonso doesn't speak your name in briefings, but he's watching every onboard. You think that's by accident. Lando looked away, eyes darting toward the pit lane as if hoping this wasn't real. But Lewis wasn't done. This isn't a fluke. This is the shift. You've got the car. You've got the rhythm. Now you need to own it. Not borrow it. Not hope it lasts. Take it. Before someone else tries to steal your story. Lando's reply was almost a whisper. Hearing that from you, it means everything. Hamilton exhaled, his expression softening just for a beat. It meant everything when someone believed in me too. You've got the whole grid watching, Lando. Now make them chase you. What they didn't know was that just meters away, a broadcast team testing audio equipment accidentally picked up the exchange. Not the entire conversation, not the full context, but enough. Enough to ignite a wildfire online. Within an hour, Hamilton's message was trending. Rumors swirled. Memes popped up. Analysts on every F1 network speculated whether Lewis had just named his successor, passed the torch, or simply seen something no one else had the guts to say out loud. Drivers were texting each other. Teams were scrubbing comms logs, searching for proof. Verstappen's camp refused to comment. Ferrari denied overhearing anything. But people started talking differently. Media asked questions they hadn't dared ask before. Was Norris now the biggest threat to Red Bull's dominance? Was McLaren secretly the sharpest tool in the championship box? Was Hamilton admitting, in his own way, that the next king was already walking among them? Norris didn't speak about it in interviews. He kept it quiet. But when he stepped into the garage the following morning for simulator work, engineers said he looked different. He didn't ask what updates were planned. He instructed what needed to change. He didn't wait for the data, he predicted it. He carried himself like a man who had heard the most powerful validation possible, not from a team principal, not from a sponsor, but from a 7-time world champion. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Not many words had been exchanged, but the message was unforgettable. This wasn't flattery. This wasn't diplomacy. This was Lewis Hamilton in a rare unscripted moment, seeing the sport's future and saying it out loud. Not in front of cameras, not for show. Just one champion to another. You're the one this year. He moved like a storm in a suit of silence, helmet still gripped tight in his left hand, jaw clenched, eyes unblinking and locked straight ahead. Oscar Piastri wasn't walking, he was marching. The air around him seemed to shift, pressurized by something far deeper than just frustration. P5 on the board, but nowhere near peace. He didn't slow down when he passed Lando Norris. No nod, no recognition. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. Just forward motion, rapid and razor-focused. He walked right past Hamilton too, deliberately, unflinching, like he didn't even register the 7-time world champion in his periphery. Every step screamed one thing louder than words ever could: don't talk to me. Hamilton, in mid-conversation with Norris, noticed instantly. The tone in his voice shifted mid-sentence. His head turned, then his entire posture. His instincts, sharpened by decades in this sport, told him what that kind of walk meant. Not anger. Something more dangerous. Disappointment. Quiet disappointment. The kind that festers. The kind that leads to fractures inside a team. Without hesitation, Hamilton raised a hand as if to pause the conversation, muttered a quick hold up, and took off after the younger driver, cutting through the narrow corridor like a veteran chasing a ghost of his own past. There were no broadcast cameras in the area, just a few team comm staff and a couple of startled mechanics who'd stopped mid-coffee. What happened next was partially overheard by one of them, a McLaren technician standing near the coolant station, close enough to catch fragments of what would soon become one of the most talked-about off-camera moments of the weekend. Hamilton caught up, didn't stop him, just walked beside him for a few paces. Then he placed a hand gently on Piastri's arm and said something too measured to be accidental. "You're fast. Everyone knows that. But speed without steel up here." He tapped his temple lightly. "It won't carry you far. This sport's a war in your head before it's a race on track. You let one bad weekend write your story, and you're already losing the plot." Piastri didn't slow down. But he didn't shrug him off, either. He glanced sideways, gave a slight nod, barely a movement, but it was there. "A silent I hear you." Hamilton's voice dropped again, just low enough that the technician had to lean in to catch the last bit. "You're in the right seat. Right era. Right fight. But moments don't wait. You've got to want them before they even arrive. Stay hungry. Stay patient. That balance? That's the trick." Piastri didn't reply. Not a word. But he didn't need to. The silence was loud enough. What followed was even more telling. Piastri walked straight past the debrief room. Straight past his engineer. Past the screens, the data, the waiting seats. He went directly to the driver's room. Shut the door. Alone. No post-race discussion. No reflection session. No usual processing of what went wrong. And inside the garage, the unease settled like fog. McLaren insiders later whispered it wasn't about tire windows or pit sequence. It was bigger, deeper, psychological. Piastri had started feeling something he didn't know how to say out loud, that maybe, just maybe, The team's internal focus, their long-term bet, was shifting. Shifting toward Lando. That the trust, the flexibility, the subtle privileges you don't see on paper but feel in the margins? Those were beginning to favor someone else. It wasn't official. It wasn't declared. But it didn't need to be. The dynamics inside a Formula One team are like tectonic plates, silent, until the moment they break. And that, perhaps, is why Hamilton said what he said. Not as a mentor. Not as a rival. But as someone who's lived through being the rising star, and the fading one. Through being the center of attention, and watching it shift. Because Lewis didn't just see Oscar's walk, he recognized it. He'd been that walk. But not all of Hamilton's energy that afternoon was quietly compassionate. In other corners of the paddock, the mood around him was colder, sharper, heavier. Especially when it came to Charles Leclerc. Whatever thread of professional courtesy existed between them had been fraying for months. But after the way things had gone on track, and off, it felt like something had finally snapped. A charity photo op had been scheduled. Both drivers were asked to attend. High-profile partner. Cameras ready. Leclerc showed up first, on time, suited and composed. He stood there waiting, eyes on the horizon, ignoring the buzz around him. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then word came, Hamilton wouldn't be attending. No reschedule. No alternate plan. Just, no. Leclerc didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. But the Ferrari communications officer present heard him clearly. Just 4 words, spoken low, almost casually, but each one laced with years of competitive tension. Typical. Only shows up when he gets the headlines. It wasn't bitterness. It was disgust. That simmering kind. The kind that builds when respect starts to decay. Because Charles, like many in the paddock, had noticed a pattern. Hamilton the statesman when winning. Hamilton the diplomat in the spotlight. But when things were less flattering, when headlines weren't painting him gold, he disappeared. Skipped events. Dodged obligations. Retreating into silence, or selective absence. And for Leclerc, that wasn't just disappointing, it was infuriating. Because he'd grown up idolizing Hamilton. Because he'd built part of his career chasing him. Because he believed, for years, that Lewis was the standard. Now, he wasn't so sure. People around Ferrari said the tension had become noticeable even during technical briefings. That there was less eye contact. That the pre-race banter was gone. That even basic greetings felt strained. And now, after refusing to stand next to him in a charity shoot and after the controversial move that forced Leclerc off his racing line during the early stages of the race, things weren't just uncomfortable. They were combustible. Hamilton didn't speak publicly about the skipped photo. But some say he didn't need to. His silence was the message. A silent refusal to engage. To play along. To pretend the rivalry hadn't gotten personal. And if you looked closely, it wasn't just Leclerc watching. It was the entire paddock. Engineers. Strategists. Team bosses. The old guard and the new generation. Because when Hamilton speaks to a driver like Piastri, the world listens. When he avoids a driver like Leclerc, the world notices. Every handshake missed, every glance dodged, every step avoided, it all adds up. It all sends signals. And Formula One doesn't forget those signals. It hoards them, amplifies them, turns them into legacy-defining moments. Piastri walked alone. Hamilton spoke softly. Leclerc waited and muttered. 3 drivers, 3 arcs, 1 weekend. But the aftershocks? They were just beginning. The paddock never sleeps. And neither do the stories it writes. They don't shake hands anymore. Not really. What used to be a nod across the paddock or a mutual pat on the back after a close battle has dissolved into silence. Icy, calculated silence. When they pass each other now, there's no acknowledgement. Just eyes locking for a split second, each daring the other to blink first. Whatever respect once lived between them has been hollowed out and replaced by something sharper, heavier, and far more dangerous. The facade of sportsmanship is still there for the cameras, the FIA, and the sponsors. But beneath it, everyone in the paddock knows what's really going on. Jeddah planted the first seed. That wasn't just a qualifying session, it was psychological warfare, disguised as coincidence. Leclerc was purple through the first 2 sectors, fully committed, just moments from putting Ferrari on provisional pole. And then, out of nowhere, Hamilton's Mercedes loomed ahead. He didn't block overtly. He didn't swerve. He simply didn't move. Leclerc hesitated. Lap ruined. The timing screens blinked, the moment passed, and with it, something in Charles's trust snapped. No one could prove intent, but Charles didn't need evidence. He saw everything he needed in Hamilton's mirrors. It only got worse in Zandvoort. 2 wheel-to-wheel clashes in the rain, both of them millimeters from disaster. In turn 3, Hamilton pushed Charles high on the banking, just enough to force a correction. Later, barreling into turn 1, Leclerc squeezed back, tighter than necessary, daring a collision. Neither lifted. Neither backed down. Post-race, they avoided each other in park firm. No glances. No words. Just tension so thick it clung to the air like mist. When reporters asked if they'd talked, Leclerc gave a tight smile and said, "No need." At Imola, the mask shattered completely. The overtake wasn't clean. It wasn't elegant. It was violent. Hamilton dove in, late and hard, pushing Leclerc toward the gravel with surgical ruthlessness. It wasn't just a move, it was a statement. "This is my corner. You move or we crash." Leclerc moved. He finished the lap. But something inside him cracked. Again. Back in the garage, he was electric with fury. He didn't yell. He didn't throw his gloves. That would have been simple. Instead, he went straight to the data terminal. And then, quietly but insistently, he asked for Hamilton's telemetry. Once. Then again. His voice was calm but laced with fire. Ferrari engineers hesitated. That kind of request doesn't happen unless you're preparing to escalate. But Leclerc didn't blink. He wanted to see Hamilton's brake traces, his steering inputs, his throttle lift. He was looking for confirmation, not from race control, but for himself. He wanted to know if what he felt was true, that this wasn't just racing. It was personal. They never filed a protest. Not officially. But they didn't have to. Everyone in the team felt the shift. The engineers walked faster. The debrief was quieter. Even the mechanics, usually joking over tire temps and torque maps, kept their heads down. Leclerc's message was clear. Next time, he doesn't move. Across the paddock, the vibe at Mercedes was unnervingly calm. There was no tension. No meetings running long. Just quiet satisfaction. Hamilton was relaxed, speaking softly with his engineer, sipping on electrolyte water while watching race footage like it was a highlight reel. Someone leaned in and asked about Leclerc. The tension. The growing friction. He didn't laugh, but his eyes lit up with a spark that didn't need words. Then he said it, casual, cold, devastating. "He's rattled. I'd be too if I were him." That one sentence exploded behind the scenes. Reporters texted it across time zones. Team principals read it and smirked. Even Red Bull engineers whispered about it over post-race beers. Because everyone knows, when Hamilton gets into your head, he doesn't leave. He builds a condo. But it's not just words. He's turned this into a full-on campaign. In public, he's a mentor to the next generation, talking strategy with Piastri, boosting Norris's confidence, sending encouraging nods to young talents like Behrman and Doohan. But in the shadows, he's drawing lines in the sand. Quiet ones. Deadly ones. Ferrari knows it. Leclerc knows it. And he hates it. Sources inside Maranello say Leclerc hasn't been the same since. He's spending longer in the sim, but fewer laps are being completed. He sits in the briefing room long after everyone else has left, just staring at sector maps. He's wearing his headset longer in the garage, not to block noise, but to block people. One team member described it as an invisible storm. He's snapping less, but internalizing more. It's a pressure cooker. And Hamilton can hear it ticking. Sainz, meanwhile, is stuck in the crossfire. He's performing, but every press conference now pivots to the feud. What do you think of Charles and Lewis? Do you think the team will back Charles in Montreal? It's endless. And it's starting to eat at him. "I'm not in this rivalry," he reportedly said to a teammate. "But it's going to blow, and I'm going to be standing right there when it does." Russell's angle is different. He respects Leclerc's speed, but in private, he's skeptical. He's emotionally raw, he told a close friend in Imola. And Lewis? Lewis feeds on that. George isn't wrong. Hamilton has made a career of dismantling rivals, mentally, strategically, inch by inch. He did it to Rosberg, to Vettel, to Alonso. Now it's Leclerc. And Montreal is looming. The circuit Gilles Villeneuve is no place for restraint. Tight chicanes, hairline margins, and the infamous wall of champions waiting like a guillotine. Everyone is holding their breath. If they find each other on track again, and they will, there will be no room for courtesy. Hamilton won't lift. Leclerc won't yield. The collision course is set. Whether it happens in qualifying or lap 1, everyone knows it's coming. This isn't about points anymore. It's about territory. It's about pride. Hamilton sees himself as the standard. The legend still writing his ending. Leclerc sees himself as the heir. The one meant to dethrone the kings. But F1 doesn't hand over thrones. You take them, or you break trying. Behind the scenes, Ferrari is arming for a different kind of war. They've compiled data, built simulations, reviewed every wheel movement from Imola in high fidelity. And they're waiting. If Hamilton crosses a line in Canada, literally or politically, they'll strike. Mercedes, for their part, has already briefed the FIA on racing conduct, almost daring a confrontation. Both teams are sharpening their knives. The next incident won't just trigger stewards, it could ignite chaos that spans the rest of the calendar. There are no more pretenses. No more pats on the back. Just animosity, precision, and waiting. And the sport? It's watching like a crowd outside a locked cage, waiting for the bell. Not because they want violence, but because they know it's inevitable. This isn't just rivalry. It's a storm made of ego, memory, and hunger. And the lightning hasn't even struck yet. The energy in the air after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix felt almost unnatural, like the calm after a controlled demolition. People were speaking in hushed tones despite the roar of tire trolleys and hydraulic lifts. Everyone could feel it, something had shifted. Not just in the championship standings or the intra-team dynamics, but in the unspoken hierarchy of the sport. Hamilton's lap times weren't just fast. They were deliberate. Calculated. Each sector seemed like a message, each lap a carefully carved line through the canvas of Imola. He crossed the line with a time that left Charles Leclerc a full second behind, and yet, that stat barely scratched the surface of what actually happened. The chaos was never about the stopwatch. It was about ego, control, and the psychological warfare of elite motorsport. By lap 3, tension turned physical. Leclerc found himself abruptly forced into evasive braking at Variante-Villeneuve, not due to mechanical failure or weather conditions, but because Hamilton, with zero hesitation and maximum commitment, sliced down the inside like a fighter pilot through enemy airspace. Leclerc was in mid-corner prep when it happened. With Norris breathing down his neck and Sainz lurking just behind, he had to make a split-second choice: crash or concede. He lifted, braked, lost momentum, and in an instant, 5 cars engulfed him like vultures. Norris shot through, Piastri danced past, Perez and Alonso pounced, and Sainz took the outside line like he'd rehearsed it in a simulator. Leclerc, caught in a freefall, could only watch as his clean start disintegrated. From that moment on, Charles wasn't racing, he was recovering. His strategy fell apart. His pit window got tighter. Tire degradation became a trap, not a tool. Every radio call felt sterile, disconnected from the firestorm in his head. Front locking again, he said at one point, more to himself than to his engineer. He regained a few positions through sheer will, but his chances of a podium had vanished. And somewhere deep inside, he knew it wasn't bad luck or timing. It was Hamilton. When the race ended, Charles skipped the usual routine. No handshake line. No eye contact with fans. He handed his gloves to an intern and walked straight toward Mercedes' compound, not speaking to a single team member along the way. People around him cleared space instinctively. The look on his face said more than any press conference ever could. Inside the Mercedes motorhome, Hamilton was reviewing tire wear metrics, chatting casually with his performance engineer. He didn't see Leclerc walk in, but he felt the silence that followed. The kind of silence that only comes before a storm. "Are you proud of that move?" Leclerc asked, voice low but crackling with fury. Hamilton didn't look away. I made the corner. That's all that matters. You knew I had traffic behind me. You made the move knowing I'd have to get out of the way. I made the move because you left it open, Hamilton replied, calm but cold. You blinked. I didn't. They stood face to face for a few seconds that felt like minutes. Not shouting. Not pushing. Just two drivers locked in a private war. Hamilton's gaze didn't waver. Leclerc's hands were clenched at his sides. The moment was broken only when Toto Wolff stepped in from the hall, speaking with a kind of authority that could silence thunder. Take this outside if it's going any further, he said. But neither moved. Leclerc turned sharply and walked out, saying just one thing as he left: you race like someone who's afraid to lose. The tension escalated when Frederic Vasseur showed up at the Mercedes hospitality suite. His tone was diplomatic, but his body language was pure aggression. He came armed with data, telemetry, camera footage, steering input graphs, all to prove one thing: that Hamilton's move was not just bold, but over the line. Inside a closed-door meeting, voices rose. Vasseur argued it was a calculated ambush, while Toto responded that it was a championship driver making a championship move. Hamilton, sitting silently, finally spoke up. If Charles wants to win titles, he's going to have to stop waiting for perfect conditions. I didn't see Max hesitate when he took the crown. I didn't see Nico back off when he took mine. Vasseur shot back, and how many people crashed trying to follow your example? The meeting ended without resolution. Ferrari didn't push for a penalty, perhaps knowing it wouldn't stick, perhaps realizing the bigger damage had already been done psychologically. Leclerc left the circuit in silence, his hoodie up, sunglasses on, ignoring cameras, stepping into the team van without a word. But back in the McLaren garage, another story was unfolding quietly. Lando Norris had finished strong again, and yet the buzz around him wasn't about champagne or celebration. It was about calculation. He was uncharacteristically quiet in the Sunday debrief, not joking, not nodding along. Instead, he was listening to wind tunnel data projections for Barcelona, asking detailed questions about diffuser changes and weight distribution in low-speed corners. He stayed behind after the rest of the team had left, walking through tire degradation simulations with his race engineer. One observer described it best: it was like watching someone doing equations for their own coronation. When asked about the Hamilton-Leclerc incident, Lando reportedly shrugged and said, "It's racing. You lift, you lose." That was all. As for Hamilton, he left Imola almost invisibly. No video message to fans. No Instagram post about fighting spirit. Just one short quote to a passing reporter outside the paddock gates. "Titles go to those who believe before the rest of the world catches on," he said, getting into the back seat of his courtesy car. Right now, Lando's the only one driving like he's already there. It wasn't a compliment. It was a signal. A prophecy wrapped in a whisper. Because if Hamilton, the man who has stared down and broken world champions for over a decade, sees something rising in Norris, the paddock better take notice. If there's one thing Hamilton never misses, it's the scent of a new king. And it might not be in Red Bull colors, or Ferrari red, or Mercedes silver. It might be someone in orange, quietly rewriting the script, one perfect apex at a time.